They said I was the girl who peaked in high school. The one who never moved out of that crumbling apartment, who worked too hard for too little. I got used to being overlooked by my family, my friends, even myself at times. But what they didn't know was that every quiet moment, every silent sacrifice, was part of something much, much bigger. And it all began with the night they laughed at me over dinner, just before they realized the building they envied was mine. The first thing you notice when you walk into that apartment is the creak in the floor near the door. Right after that, if you're paying attention, is the faint scent of lemon cleaner I used to scrub the counters that morning. It's not fancy. Nothing about it is. The walls are thin. The faucet drips if you don't twist it just right. And the heater? Well, it works when it feels like it. This was where I lived for almost 8 years. To the people who knew me or thought they did, that apartment was proof I hadn't made it. It was their favorite punchline. I was the girl with the discount furniture, the one still renting well into her 30s. The one who just couldn't figure life out. They never asked about the rent. They never asked if I was happy. They just assumed because in their world if you don't show off success you must not have it. My sister Angela once joked at Thanksgiving, half smile, glass of wine in hand, we should start a GoFundMe and get you a real place, Nora. Something with central air at least. Everyone laughed. Even my mom shook her head like she was embarrassed. Like my life was a stage in some sad play she didn't want her friends to see. I didn't laugh. But I didn't argue either. Because I learned a long time ago when people decide who you are, they don't care much for your side of the story. What they didn't know, what they never even bothered to consider, was that I chose to stay there. That apartment? It was mine. Paid in full. The whole building actually. 4 units, 1 title deed, and my name on every square inch of it. But I didn't need them to know that. Not yet. You see, I've always believed that real power doesn't come from proving people wrong at the top of your lungs. It comes from staying quiet while you build. From biting your tongue while they laugh because you know what's coming. Still, I'm not going to pretend it didn't sting. There were nights when their words echoed louder than the neighbors upstairs. When I wondered if I was stupid for taking the long road. For skipping the glossy career and choosing this path no one respected. When the air inside those old walls felt heavier than it should have, and I curled up on my second-hand couch wondering if silence was the same as being invisible. But here's what they never understood. I wasn't stuck. I was studying. While they bragged about office promotions and Instagram-worthy kitchens, I was reading books on real estate finance, listening to podcasts on my way to my second job, watching videos about property tax loopholes and equity leverage. I was building brick by invisible brick. And I stayed in that old apartment for a reason. It let me save. It kept my expenses down. And it reminded me every single day of why I started. They saw cracked tiles and missing cabinet handles. I saw 4 streams of passive income and a foundation to build a life from. But to them, none of that mattered. To them, I was still the pathetic girl in the apartment. And that was fine. Because they were about to find out. The woman they thought they knew? She was only getting started. It happened on a Sunday. Angela had invited a few friends over to my mom's house for dinner, something casual, just family and a few close ones, she said. I almost didn't go. I had a lease renewal due, a maintenance issue to check on, and honestly, I knew how those dinners went. There was always some jab hidden behind a smile. Some reminder that I didn't quite belong in the world they lived in. But I went. I brought a bottle of wine, nothing fancy but thoughtful. I wore the same black cardigan I've had for years, the one I feel most myself in. And I showed up on time with a smile. Dinner started fine. Angela talked about her new condo. Mom bragged about my nephew's grades. My cousin Derek shared some drama from his office. I just listened. I was used to it. Then someone asked me casually, so Nora, still in that old apartment of yours? I nodded, keeping my tone light. Yeah. Still there. Angela laughed. God, Nora. You're like the last holdout. Everyone else we know has moved on, bought a place, upgraded. You really must love that shoebox. Shoebox. That word hit harder than it should have. Someone else chimed in, hey, if she's happy, that's what matters. Right. Angela leaned back and sipped her wine. Sure, but don't you ever want something more? I mean, come on. You've been in that place since, what, forever? Still renting, right? That's when it happened. My mom, who hadn't said much all night, sighed and added, she's just comfortable, I guess. Some people aren't meant for big things. Big things. The word sat in my stomach like a stone. No one meant to be cruel, I think. Not really. But that's how it always was with them, death by 1,000 tiny cuts. And for some reason that night, one of those cuts went deeper than usual. I didn't say a word. I just smiled like I always did. But inside, I was already gone. I watched them pass the salad bowl and toast to Angela's new backsplash, and I knew, truly knew, that they would never see me differently. Not unless I made them. That night, I drove back to my shoebox and sat in the living room, legs curled under me, phone in hand, and stared at the numbers on my property management app. Rent deposits. Positive cash flow. 3 maintenance tickets closed that day. Every number was a piece of a story they didn't even know I was writing. I could have told them. I could have stood up at that table and said, I own the building I live in. And 3 others. I'm not stuck, I'm strategic. But I didn't. Because I wasn't ready for them to know. Not yet. I wanted it to hit when it mattered most. When there was no deflection. No minimizing. No, oh well, good for you, tossed out like a consolation prize. I wanted the truth to land. Loud. Clear. And undeniable. And it would. Just not at the dinner table. Not yet. I didn't come from wealth. I didn't grow up with real estate terms floating through dinner conversations. My parents were paycheck-to-paycheck people, coupon clippers, clearance aisle shoppers, the kind who turned the thermostat down in winter to save a few bucks on gas. But I knew struggle. And I knew how to stretch a dollar. So when I decided I was going to build something bigger, I started with what I had. My apartment was old, but I knew the building. I knew what units were vacant, who the owner was, what repairs were being neglected. I started asking questions. And then I started listening. Closely. Mr. Fields, the landlord, was in his 70s. Tired. Frustrated with turnover, with plumbing issues, with rising insurance premiums. I offered to help for free. Just managing the maintenance schedule, coordinating with tenants, organizing files. In exchange, I got insight into what it really meant to own property. 6 months later, he asked if I wanted to buy one of the vacant units. Not rent. Buy. At first, I laughed. I didn't have that kind of money. But Mr. Fields was old school. He didn't trust banks. What he wanted was someone who would keep the building running, someone who cared. We worked out a seller financing deal. I paid him monthly like rent, but every payment chipped away at the purchase price. I signed the papers in a dingy kitchen under flickering fluorescent lights. No champagne. No cameras. Just me and a pen, and a trembling hand that knew this was bigger than anything I'd ever done. That unit became mine. I gutted it myself. Watched YouTube videos to learn how to patch drywall, fix leaky faucets, paint clean edges. I bought appliances secondhand and carried them up the stairs one at a time. I spent every weekend with paint in my hair and calluses on my fingers. Then I rented it out. And just like that, I became a landlord. I repeated the process with another unit. Then another. Eventually, Mr. Fields asked if I wanted to take over the whole building. We sat at his kitchen table and signed a deal I negotiated myself. No agents, no banks, no noise. I was 36 years old and I owned the entire building I was still living in. But I didn't upgrade my car. I didn't post a thing on social media. I didn't change a single outward thing. Because I wasn't building for appearances. I was building for independence. I took the rent I earned and started saving again. I learned about 1031 exchanges. Depreciation. Multifamily syndication. I consumed books, podcasts, webinars. I talked to investors, learned from contractors, even took night classes at the community college, quietly, anonymously. My friends were buying handbags and going on cruises. I was buying water heaters and budgeting for roof repairs. Every time I walked into my apartment, I reminded myself, this isn't a failure. This is foundation. And I'm going to build on it until the world has no choice but to see it. In my 3rd year, I bought a small duplex across town. I split 1 unit into 2 and tripled the rent. In my 4th year, I invested in a 6-unit near the university. I created systems, checklists, spreadsheets, automation tools. I hired my first property manager, then a bookkeeper, then a virtual assistant. Every time I added a property, I added freedom. But to my family, I was still the girl stuck in that same apartment. They didn't know I paid cash for my second building. They didn't know I had tenants in 3 zip codes. They didn't know I made more in passive income every month than Angela did at her marketing job. And I wasn't about to tell them. Not because I was ashamed, but because I was strategic. Because sometimes the most powerful move isn't clapping back. It's staying silent long enough to let the truth make noise all on its own. And I knew my moment was coming. The call came on a Wednesday afternoon. I was at my usual coffee shop, laptop open, checking spreadsheets and rent reports when my phone buzzed. It was from Mr. Jacobs. He owned a 3-story commercial building just 2 blocks from my apartment. I knew the property. Everyone did. It had a dental office on the first floor, 2 vacant suites, and a faded for lease sign that had been hanging crooked for over a year. We'd met once at a local housing meetup. I had asked him a few questions about zoning codes and rehab permits. I listened more than I spoke. He must have remembered that. "I'm getting ready to sell," he said. "You seemed sharp. Want to take a look before I list it?" I paused. My heart jumped. This wasn't just another unit, this was a building. Commercial. Public. Central. The kind of thing that would change how people saw me if I wanted them to. I didn't say yes right away. Instead, I did what I always did. I ran the numbers. Assessed the risk. Walked the property 3 times. Talked to a contractor. Pulled historical rent data from the city's database. And when I saw the opportunity, I didn't hesitate. We negotiated directly. No agents. No pressure. He wanted out. I wanted in. I leveraged equity from my existing properties, pulled from my reserves, and closed in 32 days. It was the largest deal I'd ever made. And I did it with calm hands. When I walked through that building with the keys in my palm, I didn't scream. I didn't post a thing. I just stood there beneath those high ceilings and dusty skylights and let the silence wrap around me. Because I knew what this meant. I wasn't just growing. I was arriving. I got to work immediately, updated the entryway, renovated the suites, repainted the front signage. The old for lease sign came down and a new one went up. Benton Properties Management. Now accepting commercial inquiries. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't even expensive. But it was mine. Within weeks, inquiries started rolling in. A local bakery. A fitness studio. A startup consultant. Small businesses hungry for space. And then one name stood out, Angela's friend Jenna. She ran a boutique candle shop that had outgrown her garage. I didn't recognize the name right away, but when I saw the Instagram profile attached to the inquiry, I laughed. There she was, standing next to Angela at a dinner party, the same one where they joked about my shoebox life. Now she was asking for leasing information in my building. It was poetic. But I didn't say anything. I sent her a professional email, CC'd my property manager, and moved on. I didn't want a headline moment. What I wanted was for the truth to arrive without me ever having to say a word. That building stood tall every time someone walked by. My name quietly etched into the directory plaque at the front. Not in bold letters. Not in neon. Just enough to be seen. By those finally ready to look. It happened sooner than I expected. I was sitting at my desk one morning reviewing tenant applications when my phone lit up with a familiar name. Angela. It had been months since we last spoke, maybe longer. The last time we'd seen each other, she barely looked at me between sips of wine and real estate jokes at my expense. Now she was calling. I didn't answer. A minute later, a text buzzed through. "Hey Nora, hope you're well." Totally random, but Jenna is looking at a commercial space downtown. She said the building's managed by Benton Properties. "That you?" I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I typed back. "Yep. That's me. Read." No reply. 10 minutes later, another text. "Wait, what? Like, you're managing it? Or you own it?" I smiled. And typed 2 words. "I own it." This time it took her longer to respond. I could almost hear the silence on the other end. The realization settling in. The boutique? The building with the updated facade, the clean white lobby, the glowing signage? Mine. And I knew Angela was telling them. The family. Our cousins. Our mom. It didn't take long for the calls to come in. First was my mom. She acted casual at first. "So you've been busy, huh?" Then came the questions. "How? When? Why didn't you say anything?" And the truth was I didn't want to. Because they never asked. Because every time I tried to talk about my goals, someone rolled their eyes or changed the subject or made a joke about how Nora reads too many motivational quotes. So I stopped sharing. And I started building. 3 days after that text exchange, Jenna and Angela scheduled a walkthrough of the building. They showed up in heels and sunglasses, expecting to meet some leasing agent. I had my manager greet them in the lobby, clipboard in hand. He led them up to the unit. I stood behind the glass at the far end of the hallway, watching them admire the space. They talked loudly, impressed by the natural light, the layout, the fixtures. And then my manager handed over the info packet. Monthly rates listed here, he said. You'll need approval from the owner, Ms. Nora Benton, for final terms. They froze. Angela turned, saw me, and I will never forget the look on her face. Shock, confusion, and something else, something like regret. Wait, Nora? You're the owner, she asked, stepping forward. I smiled. Calm, quiet. Yes. Welcome to my building. If you've ever been judged by your appearance, your job, or your circumstances, leave a heart in the comments. I'd love to know I'm not alone. And if you believe quiet strength is just as powerful, like this video and subscribe. We're building a space where stories like ours are finally seen. She blinked. But you're still in that same apartment, right? I nodded. The same apartment I've owned for 7 years. Along with this building. And 3 others. Silence. Jenna looked from me to the walls around her, like suddenly everything looked different. It did. They just hadn't seen it before. Angela cleared her throat. Why didn't you ever tell us? I shrugged. You weren't listening? Later that night, my phone exploded. Family group chat lit up like fireworks. Is this true? Nora, what the heck? Why didn't you say anything? How long has this been going on? And one message from my mom that simply said, we need to talk. I didn't respond. Not yet. Because I knew this moment, this exact moment, was the one I had built for. Not for revenge. But for recognition. Not attention. Not applause. Just for the truth to finally land. Undeniable. Visible. Mine. I set my phone down, walked to my window, and looked out over the neighborhood I had invested in, watched others walk past my buildings without knowing they were mine. And I breathed. For the first time in a long time. Fully and without apology. The next day, I woke up to 4 missed calls and a voicemail from my mother. Nora, call me back. Please. No lecture this time. No sarcasm. Just quiet urgency. Angela had texted twice. My brother Adam sent a long message asking if I wanted to get lunch, something we hadn't done in years. Even my aunt, who once told me I'd missed my window by not marrying young, had left a comment on one of my old Facebook posts. Suddenly I was someone worth noticing. Funny how quickly the script flips. But I wasn't angry. Not anymore. I wasn't even surprised. The truth is, I had stopped needing their approval a long time ago. What I needed now was something different, clarity. And I finally had it. That afternoon, my mom asked if I would come over for dinner. Just her and me. She even offered to cook my favorite, rosemary chicken and mashed potatoes. I said yes. Not because I wanted an apology, but because I wanted closure. When I walked in, the house looked the same. The same frame photo of Angela in her college cap and gown. The same shelf with my brother's trophies. But now, for the first time, I noticed the empty space where my photo should have been. It didn't sting anymore. She hugged me. Tighter than usual. Then she looked at me, really looked at me, and said, I didn't know, Nora. I truly didn't know. I believed her. But I also knew, she never asked. We sat down. Ate quietly for a while. Then she said it. Why didn't you tell us? I set my fork down, wiped my hands, and took a deep breath. Because you weren't listening. Because every time I brought up something I was excited about, you changed the subject, or reminded me how I'd fallen behind. So I stopped sharing. I built in silence. And honestly, that silence gave me peace. She nodded slowly, tears welling up. You're right. She didn't make excuses. She didn't try to defend the past. She just owned it. That meant more to me than any praise ever could. Later, as I left, she walked me to the door and said quietly, I'm proud of you, Nora. I'm sorry I didn't say that sooner. I smiled. Thank you. That's all I ever wanted. That night, I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel smug. I just felt lighter. Like I had finally laid down a weight I didn't realize I was still carrying. The world hadn't changed. But I had. And they were starting to see it. Life didn't suddenly turn into a fairy tale after that. No red carpets. No billboards. No dramatic reconciliation with everyone who had ever doubted me. And honestly, I didn't want one. Because I didn't do any of this for applause. I did it so I could wake up in the morning and decide how I spent my time. I did it so I could walk into a room without shrinking. I did it so that the next time someone looked at me like I was less, I wouldn't need to correct them. The truth would speak for itself. Today, I still live in the same apartment. Well, technically I moved upstairs to the corner unit with better sunlight, but same building, same street, same zip code. I still shop at the same grocery store. I still wear my favorite old black cardigan. But now I own 7 buildings across 3 neighborhoods. I oversee 32 units and a growing waitlist. I have 2 full-time employees, a management company under my name, and a legal team that works out of an office I designed myself. And you know what? I still walk properties in worn-out sneakers. I still answer tenant calls myself when it's something urgent. And I still live below my means, not because I have to anymore, but because I like who I became on the way here. Angela texts me more now. She sends articles about real estate, asks for my opinion on investment accounts, sometimes even compliments my discipline. I respond kindly. I share what I'm comfortable sharing. But I don't let her or anyone else back in too close. Because I've learned that love without respect is just performance. And I'm not here to perform. I've also started quietly mentoring a few younger women, mostly single moms, some fresh out of messy divorces, others who've been told they missed their shot. We meet once a month over coffee. I help them understand credit scores, mortgage options, cash flow. I teach them what no one taught me. And I don't charge them a dime. Because someone once gave me a chance when all I had was a question. And I've never forgotten that. I used to think success meant proving everyone wrong. Now I know it just means living in a way that no one else controls. If you had told me 10 years ago that I'd one day be sitting at the head of my own company, that I'd be mentoring others, walking through buildings with keys I owned, signing contracts in my name, I would have laughed. Not because I didn't believe I was capable, but because back then no one else believed it. And I had started to absorb that silence as truth. It's strange how quickly we can shrink to fit the boxes other people put us in. The quiet one. The underachiever. The girl who just never got it together. But here's what I learned. You don't need everyone to believe in you. You just need one person. And sometimes, that one person has to be you. I didn't build my life out of rage or bitterness. I built it out of necessity. Out of wanting peace. Out of needing freedom. And I want you to know it's okay if you're not loud right now. It's okay if your apartment is small, your car is old, your clothes are from clearance racks. It's okay if no one claps for you, if your inbox is full of rejections, if your phone is quiet. That's not the end. That's the beginning. Invisibility is not failure. Sometimes invisibility is the gift that lets you build without interference, without ridicule, without pressure. It lets you grow in silence until one day, the roots are so deep, no storm can move you. So if you're still in that apartment, still working the job they laugh about, still trying to climb out, keep going. Don't post it. Don't explain it. Don't beg anyone to see it. Just build. Because the day will come when they'll look up and realize the girl they called pathetic is the one who owns the roof over their head. If you've ever felt overlooked or underestimated, share your story in the comments. I read them all. And if this message resonated with you, like the video, subscribe, and pass it on. Someone out there needs to hear this too.